Today I'm going to show you a bit about building up your layout and adjusting it in Illustrator. So you've already scanned in your file to the computer, so just find it, open it, make it the right size. Basically what you've done is you can use your sketch as sort of those things that you used in kindergarten, like stencils to trace a shape. You can use that as a stencil to create a layout that's more aligned and more professional looking than this piece of paper. So you can actually, the grid system we've been talking about to help align elements, you can actually show a grid on your Illustrator document. Now, when you first click it, it'll probably show it in the back if you haven't already changed this preference. So the way you get it to go to the front is Preferences, Guides and Grid, and you just have to uncheck the grids in back box. Then it'll show up in front. And then you see all these grid lines that you can use to help you line up elements. So the first thing I will add is probably this line. Then there's also triangle tools. There's lots of ways that you can do this. But I'm just making the shapes of my layout, and your shapes will probably be a lot different than mine. So there's an example of how you would get your shapes to start showing up on your page. And you can also show rulers to help you center things if you want. Then it'll show up and then you can tell like if the center of your object is aligned with the center of the page. I'm not going to put in all these tabs right now. I'll show you a little bit later. But basically, just type in and draw all your shapes that you're going to need to have and about the sizes that you want to have them. And if you want to duplicate an element so that you can move it, all you have to do is hold down the Option key if you're on a Mac. I'm not sure about if you're on a Windows. And use this to line it up. See the green lines? They show where it's intersecting with other elements. That's a very good alignment with the other elements on my page. And then you can change the size of the ones on the bottom, because I think that those little subtopics down here should probably be smaller than that one. They're less important, they're less of a focus, so you don't want them to stand out quite that much. Alright, and then to represent your text, in these areas, you can go to a random text generator, and a good way to find it is if you type in lorem ipsum on a Google search. The first website that shows up will explain a little bit about how random text generators came to be, where it comes from. Basically what it is it's random text that actually looks in form like real text, as you can see here. And that's really helpful because instead of typing in an actual article to test your layout, you can just use this random text, and it basically shows you a pretty good idea of what it's going to be. You can put it down here in these little subtopics too, if you resize it to fit. And you'll notice I'm aligning it to the grid. And we're going to call that good, and then just duplicate it over to these other guys over here, making sure that they are well aligned. And we will just add one video link that you see over here. First, we'll add a line, then we can add a link just to show kind of what it would look like, right? So in the end, when you are done with fixing up your layout, and actually the way I want this to look in the end is to have a different color right here than the main page. So I'm going to arrange this and send that to the back. Traditionally, I would have put all this in a different layer, but since I didn't, let's see. That kind of sucks. Anyway, I didn't put it in a different layer, which wasn't a good idea. Good thing that I already made one of these to show you because I thought that'd take a really long time. So here is, just a minute while we wait for the tabs to switch over. I'm going to kind of show you how to use the values and colors to emphasize the topics and importance. So here I actually drew in all of the elements. You'll see the topics and the text that I put in. And your picture is actually this layer that's locked, so you're not using it and there's really nothing there. And it doesn't really matter if it's visible or not to me because I put a background, but basically you can toggle the visibility and invisibility after you've used the stencil. So here's all the elements that I actually put in, and if you notice that your eyes are drawn to the darker colors and the lighter colors at different, you see this bar over here kind of first, right? Because it's darker, and the lighter colors usually, unless they're contrasting like this, have less emphasis. The medium colors will usually have a medium emphasis on your page. So up here, the logo box kind of really stands out because it's in between a lot of other darker colors and it's white. But down here, where the text is, the text stands out because it's a dark color and the background is white. If you wanted the topic to stand out a little more against that background, you could darken it. And that gives it a bit more emphasis. I kind of like that with this rest of the gray theme. Maybe you wouldn't like it so much if it was in color, but that makes it so personally you'd be able to see the actual topics pretty quick and skim through the website. That makes it really a lot more comfortable. I like the visual interest of these tabs. This is where I would have buttons. And in order for them to show up, I'd have to have a really light color of text, probably. Either that, or I'd have to put a special effect so they'd show up with a light color around it. But let's see over here, these are going to be video links, so they're kind of a medium color because it'll have a mix of dark and light, and I think they'll stand out against this black background and be kind of a point of interest for the rest of the page. Back here, I would think would be graphics that kind of go along with whatever my page is. And so I really like how that looks, and that's something I would like to see on a web page. And instead of having some random color thing where it was all mixed up and your eyes were drawn very most to like something unimportant like this tab right here. If that was the darkest thing and everything else was light, it wouldn't make any sense. Kind of like what I just showed you over here, where assuming that, okay, I'll just show you by actually putting one. If it had a background, and that background was a pale gray in order to contrast with the white that I know I used for the first couple of rectangles. Oops, I need to bring that forward just a bit. Oh, can't. Oh well. Anyways, imagine that this had a pale blue background. This would stick out, and this wouldn't so much. And that just wouldn't be very visually comfortable. So use of values to create a hierarchy of importance is really important to having a comfortable looking layout. So for example, if this faded from a black tab to a white tab, instead of what it is, which is kind of like a varying theme, it's balanced. It has two sets of a gradient, and that kind of brings the focus right to the middle of the page where it's pointing down to the articles. If instead it was a gradient that went from dark to light, it would draw your eyes right over to where the links are, or right over to this corner. But since there's nothing there, the balance would more likely be right over to this corner, which is where video links are, not where the topic is, which is what you're supposed to see. And if this was so all in all, make sure that your color values that you use on your layout eventually make the focus go to the correct places on your page that you'd like to emphasize, and not just to some random scattered places. You want it to feel good when you look at your web page. Thanks and good luck.